All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to our latest video. Um, Today I'm going to talk a little bit about setting up your culture and allowing yourself to build rapport with students. And I really want to start with the terminology that I just used, um, allowing yourself. So today is we're homecoming week, and so it's Friday, so I get to wear my CSU Pueblo gear, which, in the past I have always argued against. I've always said, I like the tie and the long sleeve shirts, largely because that helped set me apart as an authority when I was teaching, especially with high school students when I was, 23, 22, 21, whatever it was. And teaching these kids that were not that much older than me, and they knew it, and I knew it. So I always liked that tie. But one thing about the tie is it's a barrier. It really is. And we create natural barriers and man-made ones. So, or we allow natural barriers to inhibit us from building rapport with students. So today, what we're talking about is ultimately that classroom culture that we build and how that enables us to build rapport. And so, one of the things I like to talk about classroom culture is how do you set it up? What goes into a good classroom culture? Well, for me, I'm a big plant guy. I have lots of plants, and so anytime I'm anywhere where I'm going to spend a good chunk of my time, right, teaching 8 hours, 7 hours. I mean, if I'm going to be there for a third of my day, I want to be in a comfortable spot. So, number one, make it a place that feels comfortable to you. And, it's okay if you have some childish things on the wall. I've got over here my one of my posters from one of my favorite comic artists. I've got another one on this wall over here. And the kids are interested in that. But there's a point where that can be too overwhelming and too distracting. So I want you to keep in mind how you balance that out. So kids walk in day one, this is October 2017, fall 17, so we're in 3 months already, and maybe we aren't finding that culture to be developing. And what do I mean when I talk about culture? I'm talking that community essentially in your classroom. So when we talk about culture, it's not just what we stand for and things like that. It's where do we belong, if that makes sense. Where do we find solace in the ability to learn and access information? So we want that warm and inviting culture. One of the things that we have to do in order to do that, we can only do so much with the supplies we're given, and that we can scrounge. But the true key to culture in your classroom is how you interact with all of the students. And a great example of this is how we interact with our strongest, most apt students and our students who are most apt to get into trouble. All right, we bond with those students who are strong, right? They perform well, they're doing well in your class. That means usually they're not going to pick a fight with you or anything like that. We bond with those students, but we tend not to bond with the jerks of the world, if you want to think of it in that respect, the students who push your buttons. And so what are we doing to enable them to learn? You've heard me talk so many times about the importance of letting kids wiggle, right? Letting kids move about without you having to control it. It's just natural, right? I've got a nice swivelly office chair, I'm making noise, I'm doing my thing, but I'm getting my work done, and that's what's important. So yeah, it might annoy my neighbor, and if Mary gets annoyed by me, she'll let me know. And the same should go for your students. Hey, shh, I'm trying to work over here. Is a really easy thing for kids to get a hold of. So let's talk rapport building. And I think For some teachers, this is extremely natural because working with kids is what they've always wanted to do. Me, it doesn't come as natural as I'd like it to be. I'm a huge introvert. I like to go home and be by myself and shut down. So when I'm teaching, I'm very much extroverted. When I'm in the halls, I'm very much extroverted. I'm forcing myself to interact because it's absolutely important. And I think that's key. Number one, self-awareness. You've got to be who you are. You don't have to be me. I don't have to be you. You don't have to be your mentor. You just have to be who you are. So let's start with that, and work with our strengths. If I'm an introvert, I know that I have to work to make sure I access students, and students have the ability to access me. So when I'm walking in the halls here at the university, I try never to let one of my teacher ed students walk by without being acknowledged by me. I know it frustrates them to no end, and that's okay sometimes, because they know they're going to have to chat with Jeremiah for a couple minutes, and that's frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's allowing me to build rapport with them, and that's what's most important. So I'm going to stop here for a minute, and I want you to think about 2 students, okay? We're going to target 2 of our 25 students in elementary or 120 in secondary. Think of those 2 students that you would most like to develop a stronger rapport with. And now start thinking of yourself and what can you fix in this relationship, because this is ultimately relationship building, what we're talking about in improving this culture. Well, I think number one is just remembering the basics of good communication, right? Having good eye contact, being open, and not having those barriers. So I talk about my tie, that was a barrier, and just how I present myself in the classroom. So I try not to be fully squared off in front of the classroom when I'm talking. I try to generally be at an angle. For whatever reason, I find that enables me to get a better view of the class, for one, and then 2, this seems less standoffish with students. So we need to be very self-aware and know our communication skills, and recognize that our body language says more about us than we ever would realize. One of the things I'm a huge advocate of videotaping yourself for, is you learn to see those mannerisms that are problematic. When I was a young teacher, I used to teach like this a lot, and it could be okay for some students who can hear and don't need to see my lips move, but it's also really unprofessional, right? And so I didn't even realize I was doing that until I started watching myself on camera, which is why I love that swivel robot when I teach. So I learned those mannerisms, and I still do it. I do the Bernie Sanders thing sometimes when I'm talking, and I get real energetic. And so understanding those good communication skills. You've heard the thing I said: stand at the door, shake a kid's hand, give him the pound, whatever it is. If you want to do a cool handshake with your first hour and a different one with your second hour, kids appreciate that stuff, and it's a little cheesy, but cheesy is sometimes fun for kids. So being very self-aware and remembering the very basic elements of good communication. And I'm gonna section in there good communication and honesty. If you screw up, it's okay. Kids will call it on you if you screw up and you don't admit to it. Don't ever find yourself lying to kids, because if they ever find out you've lied to them, you've lost all that work. As a teacher, if you lose honesty and integrity, you've lost everything you've worked for with your kids, because that relationship that they've built with you is destroyed. It's really no different than in a marriage, right? You lose that honesty and integrity, and it'll never be the same again. So don't ever lie to your kids. Right, finding common ground. This is where we've broken those barriers. Now we're trying to build something up. So where's our common ground? Well, it just depends on grade level and interest, right? Whether it's the ability to recognize maybe who the new music artist is. If you're in secondary, that kind of stuff's important. For elementary, it's simply knowing what's really popular right now, and being able to talk about the latest movie, right? Beauty and the Beast or whatever. Actually, that's probably not an elementary movie. I don't know. But finding common ground with your kids is big, and really through that is all you do with that is, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn about? I do this with my elementary social studies folks. I ask them, you're paying $800 for this class, and I want to make sure you get all of your money's worth. So what are you most interested in? And let's tailor this to you. It takes time to do that, but if a kid's interest is in SpongeBob and you're making them read something that's boring, let the kid read SpongeBob. That's okay. It's okay. And then letting the kids see who you are. So again, I'll reference my comics over here. I like to infuse those. Those are Zen pencil comics. I like to infuse those in my elementary social studies class. One, because they're interesting to me, and I hope students would find them interesting. But I'm also trying to access those students who might find an interest in art and the things that I am not naturally inclined towards, because I want them to access my information in ways that I know I'm not going to present in a really natural way, if that makes sense. So for a good example, Zen Pencil comics, they are largely based on famous quotes by famous people, Eleanor Roosevelt and things like that. And so I'll find ways to engage students with that, talk about history and how we can depict history and art and things like that. And then, someone took a quote from, I think it was Marie Curie, and did this amazing comic that has so much access for kids to learn about how Marie Curie, this famous chemist and physicist, how she did all these things. And it was made in a way that you can pull in social studies, you can pull in science, you can pull in art, you can pull in talking about males and females and equity and things like that. Things like that are common ground finders. You'll see the plants over my shoulder. If I have plants in a classroom, my students are watering those plants and learning about the plants. They're going to dissect some of the plants, because right or wrong, it's kind of fun to learn about what plants do and how they react. And so I keep plants, one, because they are nice for the environment, they're good for the culture of where I'm going to spend a good amount of my time, but I can also let students get their fingers dirty, break off the leaves if they want to, so they can try and make their own plants, so that students can get dirty. And if they want to get in and try and repot something or whatever, I'm gonna let students do that, because I want them to build that interest. Okay, so we're finding that common ground, and if students know what I'm all about, they may not be 100% interested in it, but I think some students will, and I think some students who may never be exposed to stuff like that, it's fun to get your hands dirty. I think they'll take to it. And that blends into creating the shared experience. So one of the things that I really hate, my thing just shut off. Can you see me? Okay, looks like I'm going. Sorry about that. I hate this white wall in my office. I've been here for this is my third year in this office. And I've been thinking about talking to my art students about doing some sort of mural. I was thinking like the wolf head or something like that in here. So creating that shared experience, and I talk about the art students because I generally deride them often. Um, not in a bad way, just because I don't have any, and music students as well. I don't have any access to any of what they're teaching and understanding. So I always try to bridge relationships with people in those fields. So uh, when and if you take a course with me, you're going to learn a lot about project-based learning. And many of you might have learned about project-based learning, but basically, um, you are building upon a principle of one concept, and you're making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're understanding, and you're solving. And so project, and then we're also talking about problem-based learning. So I do kind of a blended project problem. You present a problem, and you have to essentially find a solution for it. This is a great way to share experiences with students. Empathy is the cornerstone of maintaining a good relationship. So you have done the groundwork to remove the barriers and to make yourself open to students, to let them understand about you, and you're working to understand more about them. But it doesn't stop there. Part of it is understanding and slowing down with students and realizing they're coming in with other things, so we're going to be empathetic to their issues, but we all have issues. We're not going to let those issues inhibit us. So we're starting with that concept. Number two, when they're in my classroom, when they're in my they're in my care, we are working as hard as possible because that's what my job is and that's what their job is. That doesn't mean I'm not empathetic to their concerns. If they're hungry, I've got a V8 or a Fruit Cup or whatever for them. Actually, I really like V8s. They're really cheap from Sam's. It comes out to like 78 cents a can or something for kids, and talk about the nutrition. But that's one of the big things. I want to talk about empathy and how we communicate with students and how we match students. So up here today, I'm not that intimidating because I don't have my tie, I don't have my my authority on. Right? Today I'm just Jeremiah. I am here on a Friday, just like everyone else. But when I have a student, I have to get down on their level, and I have to be able to match their mannerisms and their speech. And I can't talk over them because I can discombobulate them and confuse them and embarrass them really quickly with words that they don't understand. Or instead of doing that when I'm real up here in their face, I can come down to their level and I can say, "Hey man, what are you doing? This ain't working. It just isn't working. We've been working hard. Now you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. What are we gonna do?" There's no confrontation there. I don't ever want to see confrontation with students. I've confronted students. I can make students cry. I can get into students' faces real easily, and I can look them in the eye, and I can make them cry if I wanted to, but I don't want to do that because I don't have any desire to make students hate me or feel scared. So for my alternative licensure students, I spent about 18-20 minutes on this video. So I want you to take the next 10 minutes and I want you to think about these steps in the rapport building process. How self-aware are you in your classroom? How do students truly perceive you? How are you communicating? How are you finding common ground and building upon that common ground in shared experiences? How are you maintaining that relationship? And how are you continually adding to that relationship? This is what I really wanted to focus on in our Friday seminar. But for the next 10 minutes, think about those. And if it helps, go ahead and take this video and watch it with a peer or a spouse or something, because this is a relationship issue just the same as any other relationship issue. If you have a problem with a spouse, you go talk to someone, there's no difference talking about your students as though they're your children, right? We have to be able to understand that they are our students. What's the phrase? In parentis locus, in absence of the parents, we are in charge. So we have to do everything we can to build that rapport and to create that comfortable classroom culture. And when I say comfortable, that means conducive to learning. Everyone is included. And when I say conducive, it's not overtly distracting. I want color and I want fun things in a classroom, but if there's too much, then it just becomes a distraction. All right, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and take about 10 minutes to reflect on this and await another video out shortly. Thank you very much.